She was supposed to be a ghost. Darby Walsh's entire job that evening was to verify the catering delivery inventory against the Ashford Club's receiving logs, sign the paperwork, and disappear before the members' dinner started at 7. Invisible work for an invisible woman, the kind of assignment her boss, Martin Elkins, handed to the analysts he kept in the back room. The ones he didn't consider client-facing material, the ones who were too loud, too opinionated, too present in their own skin. He never said it out loud, he didn't have to. But Darby had spent 29 years being underestimated by men like Martin Elkins, and she had learned to use it. While her colleagues competed for face time with clients, she quietly became the best trade compliance analyst at Elkins & Shaw. She could read an import manifest the way other people read a novel, fluid and total, catching every comma that didn't belong. Tonight, that skill was being used to count crab cakes. The Ashford Club occupied a restored federal-style townhouse on N Street in Georgetown, all polished brass and hushed carpets, and the smell of old money that had never once worried about interest rates. Darby stood in the service corridor adjacent to the private dining room, a clipboard pressed to her chest, running her pen down the receiving inventory. The kitchen crew moved around her with the practiced efficiency of people who had learned that the curvy woman in the corner was both harmless and immovable. She was wearing her good blazer, the forest green one she'd had tailored to actually fit her wide shoulders and full chest, and her most comfortable black trousers, sensible flats. Her dark auburn hair was twisted up in a bun that had started the evening professional and was now a little loose at the temples. She looked, she knew, like exactly what she was supposed to be, a back-office person doing a back-office errand. Through the narrow crack in the service door, she could see the private dining room. 6 men, one long mahogany table. No food ordered yet, only 2 bottles of Georgian wine and a row of crystal water glasses that no one had touched. The room had the specific pressurized silence of people who were about to discuss something that could not be said anywhere else. At the head of the table sat Ruslan Drachev. Darby had read the club's client brief before the shift, as she always did. She took pride in knowing who she was working around. Ruslan Drachev, 62 years old on paper, though the man across the room looked a decade younger. Steel and logistics, born in Poltava, Ukraine. Naturalized American citizen. Homes in McLean, London, and Kyiv. A net worth the financial press estimated and the man himself never confirmed. What the brief had not said, but what the DC trade compliance world whispered in corners, was that Drachev's import empire moved more than steel, and that 3 men who had attempted to investigate him had experienced a consistent and unfortunate run of bad luck. Darby was not here to investigate anyone. She was here to sign off on whether the Atlantic halibut had arrived fresh or frozen. She returned to her clipboard. Halibut, 40 pounds, check. Imported winter truffles, 8 ounces, check. Georgian amber wine, 2 cases, check. In the dining room, the conversation shifted. The men had been speaking English, the careful, flat English of non-native speakers performing professionalism. But then Drachev said something quietly to the man on his right, a compact, watchful man with a scar cutting across his chin, and the language changed. Ukrainian. Not standard Ukrainian, not the polished Kyiv Ukrainian of government broadcasts or university lecturers. What Darby heard through that door was the specific rolling cadence of the Poltava region, the one that softened certain vowels and hardened others, the one that her grandmother Baba Halina had spoken every single day of her life, right up until the end, because she had arrived in Ohio at age 53 and decided that English was someone else's problem. Darby's pen stopped moving. She did not react. She was very, very good at not reacting, but her ears tuned like radio dials, the way they always did when she heard that particular music coming from an unexpected place. The shipment from the Baltimore terminal, the man with the scar was saying. Taras confirmed the manifest was clean. Drachev's response was quiet and unhurried. And yet 12 million disappeared between the terminal and the Falls Church warehouse. Clean manifests and missing money. Someone is writing fiction. Another man spoke, younger, sweating through his collar. Taras. The name fit the shape of the man, Darby thought. Something compressed, something wound too tight. I had nothing to do with the inventory discrepancy. The cargo cleared on time. Ask Mykola. We will ask Mykola, the scarred man said, when we find him. The implication settled in the air like smoke. Darby stared at the halibut line on her clipboard and did not move a single muscle. She knew what a clean manifest looked like. She also knew what a manipulated one looked like. She had flagged a suspiciously structured commodity valuation for a company called Archon Distribution 6 months ago. A minor client, one of dozens, a filing so slippery that it had taken her 3 days to articulate exactly what was wrong with it. Martin had reviewed it and told her she was being paranoid. They hadn't lost the client. The filing had gone through. Archon Distribution, Falls Church warehouse. She had filed that connection the way she filed everything, quietly, completely, without announcing it. Her work phone buzzed against her hip, the emergency override line. Everyone at the table heard it. 6 pairs of eyes moved toward the service door. Darby felt the weight of them like weather. "Excuse me," she said, stepping forward, keeping her voice level. "I apologize. Emergency line, I'll step outside." "Stay in the room." Drashev spoke without looking at her. His English was accented and precise. "Keep your voice down. We are finishing something." It was not a request. Darby turned toward the far corner of the service corridor, pressing her back between 2 shelving units. She pulled out the phone. The number on the screen was Mykola Havrilenko's. Her Mykola, the logistics coordinator at the Port of Baltimore who managed the receiving side of Elkins and Shaw's import clients, a man she'd worked with for 4 years. A man constitutionally incapable of calling during business hours, but somehow always found her emergency line at the worst possible moments. "Darby." His voice came through immediately, loud and fully aggrieved. "The refrigerated container is going to miss its inspection window. The inspector won't stay past 7, and if we miss the window, the whole load goes back. Your client will lose the entire consignment." "Mykola," she kept her voice to a near whisper, "I cannot talk right now." "You cannot talk. Darby, there are $40,000 of pharmaceuticals on this container. If you can't authorize a hold extension, then email me the authorization form. I'll sign it remotely." "There is no time for email. You need to call the inspection supervisor directly. His name is—" "Mykola," she pressed the phone harder against her ear. "Send me the form." "The system is down. That is what I have been trying to tell you for the last." The refrigerated container, $40,000. An inspection supervisor who could only be reached by phone, tonight at this precise moment, while Darby Walsh stood in a dining room with a man who had just calmly discussed making someone disappear. The switch flipped. It was not a decision. It was something older than decisions. It was Baba Halina, who had spent 50 years in Ohio speaking the language of Poltava because it was hers, and no one could take it from her, running like a live current through Darby's blood. Mykola Petrovich Havrilenko. Her voice dropped to a register she rarely used in professional settings, and the words that followed were not English. They were the rounded, rolling syllables of Poltava Ukrainian, the ones she'd grown up with at her grandmother's kitchen table, and they were precise and devastating. "You will send me that inspector's number right now, or I swear on every icon in my grandmother's house. I will file a complaint with the port authority that has your credentials reviewed until your grandchildren are old enough to retire. Send the number now." A brief, scorched silence on the line. "Yes," Mykola said very quietly, "sending." Darby ended the call. She drew a slow breath. She smoothed her blazer. And then she turned around. The private dining room had gone completely still. All 6 men were looking at her. Taras had stopped sweating and started staring. The scarred man had one hand resting flat on the table in a posture of controlled attention. The other men were various shades of stunned. Drashev was not stunned. He was watching her with the specific, measuring quality of a man who has just seen something categorically new. His head had tilted slightly. His dark eyes, which had been flat and unreadable all evening, were fully alive. He knew. He knew she had understood every word. "Is there a problem with the delivery, miss?" He looked to the scarred man. "Walsh," the man said. "Miss Walsh." Drashev's voice was careful and deliberate. "Is there a problem with your delivery?" "No, sir." Her voice did not shake. She had made it a rule long ago that she would not shake in rooms where shaking would make things worse. "Everything is handled. I apologize for the interruption." Drashev held her gaze for 5 seconds that felt considerably longer. Something moved across his face. Not a smile, not quite. Something more considered than a smile. "Good," he said. Then to the scarred man, "We'll finish this in the car." Darby gathered her clipboard and walked to the service exit as quickly as professional dignity permitted. She made it to the parking structure before she let herself breathe. Her car was on level 2. She walked fast, running numbers in her head the way she did when she needed to push fear to the periphery. Arkon distribution, Falls Church, the commodity classification that had never sat right, what she had just heard through that door. She needed to get home. She needed to sit down with her laptop and confirm what she already suspected. She was 10 feet from her Honda Accord when the overhead fluorescent crackled, and a man stepped out of the shadow between 2 SUVs. The scarred man, Goran. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He was simply standing between her and her car, and the geometry of the moment was its own complete sentence. "I don't know anything," Darby said. Her voice was level. "I wasn't listening to your conversation. My Ukrainian is conversational at best." "You told Mykola Havrilenko," Goran said, with the accent of a man for whom foreign languages were professional data, that you would file complaints until his grandchildren retired. You used a specific Poltava idiom. Your grandmother is from Lubny. Darby said nothing. "That is not conversational Ukrainian, Miss Walsh. That is your first language." She squared her shoulders. She was not a tall woman, but she was a wide one, sturdy in the way that broad hips and thick arms are sturdy, built for endurance rather than spectacle. She'd learned early that width could communicate refusal as clearly as height. She did not flinch. Goran studied her for a moment, then he stepped aside, and Ruslan Drashev walked out of the darkness behind him. He had shed his suit jacket. In the flat concrete light of the parking structure, he looked less like a man who ran board meetings and more like what he actually was, someone who had grown up in a city that did not protect you and had decided to become the thing that did the not protecting. His shoulders filled the space they occupied. His eyes, in this light, were the color of deep water at night. He stopped a few feet from her. "That phrase you used," he said. "The one about the icons. My mother said that exact phrase to a tax inspector in 1998. Darby said nothing. "Lubny," he said. "My grandfather was from Mirhorod, 40 kilometers east." The information sat between them, like something delicate being offered across a table. "Mr. Drashev," she held his gaze, "whatever was discussed in that dining room is not my business. I have no interest in making it my business. I'm going home." "You heard Taras's name." "I hear a lot of names. I don't know who Taras is." A small, controlled pause. Drashev watched her. Goran watched Drashev. "You are a remarkably composed person," Drashev said. "I work in customs compliance. Composure is the job." "Trade compliance." He said it slowly, as if tasting the words for something he hadn't expected to find there. "Import documentation. Commodity classification, tariff codes, country of origin verification, mainly mid-size commercial importers. It's not exciting." Another silence, the kind where a decision is being made. "Come upstairs," he said. "I want to discuss something. I have an inspection authorization to file." Goran will get you a secure connection. Mr. Drachev, I'm not asking you to disappear. He said it quietly without theatre. I'm asking you to come upstairs and tell me what a trade compliance analyst hears when she looks at an import manifest with $12 million missing from it. Darby looked at him. She looked at Goran. She noted, without appearing to note, the two men who had materialized at the parking structure exits without her hearing them arrive. Fine, she said, but I'm using my own laptop. Goran blinked. Drachev, for the first time that evening, almost smiled. The Ashford Club's owner's suite occupied the entire top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows. The lights of Georgetown spread below like a circuit board, the kind of room that announced, without any particular effort, exactly where you stood in relation to everyone else. Darby sat at the long dining table with her laptop open and a glass of wine positioned to her left that she had no immediate plans for. Drachev sat across from her. Goran stood near the window. You flagged something, Drachev said. 6 months ago, Archon Distribution. Darby went still. I monitor firms that process documentation for my associates, he said. At a certain level of legal structure, you know where the filings originate. Your firm handled Archon's commodity classifications for the Baltimore shipment. One of my analysts found an internal compliance query. Your name was on it, closed without resolution. Your people read our internal files. My people read everything. He held her gaze. What did you flag? She set her hands flat on the table. She was good at this, the clinical part, where she separated the emotional reality of a situation from the analytical task inside it. The analytical task was the only part she could control. Archon filed an import declaration in March, she said. Steel alloy components, commodity code 722830. Declared unit value was $14.20 per kilogram. Market rate for that grade of alloy at that time was between $6 and $8 per kilogram. The overstated value inflated the total declared shipment value by approximately $11 million. Drachev was watching her with an attention she was not accustomed to. Most people listened to her compliance explanations the way they listened to terms of service agreements. Present but functionally absent, he was listening the way she read manifests. The overstated value creates a paper asset, she continued. You move money by reconciling the declared value against a domestic payment. The importer overpays for the goods on paper. The excess moves offshore as a business expense. It's called trade-based money laundering, and it's genuinely not as rare as it should be. And the $12 million between Baltimore and Falls Church is almost certainly the reconciliation payment. Someone collected it. And from the conversation I wasn't listening to, it doesn't appear it was collected by the right person. Goran turned from the window. How do you know the name Taras means something? Because when you said it in that dining room, Darby said carefully, you said it the way people say the name of a problem they made themselves. Silence. Drachev leaned back in his chair. He looked at her with an expression that had several layers in it. She catalogued them the way she catalogued everything. Surprise, something assessing and precise, and underneath both of those, quiet and heavy, something she didn't have a clean professional word for. Taras managed the Archon filings, he said. He was responsible for the reconciliation. The money was supposed to move through 3 shell companies and land in a fund I control. Instead, it landed in a fund Taras controls. And Taras is currently explaining to me that it simply vanished. He'll have set up the offshore account using the same shell structure you use, Darby said. That's why it's difficult to trace. It looks identical to your normal routing until you get 3 layers in. Can you get 3 layers in? She looked at him. I'm not asking you to commit a crime, he said. I am asking if you can read a document trail. I can read any document trail. Even one designed to look legitimate. Especially one designed to look legitimate. The people who build these structures always make the same 2 mistakes. She pulled her laptop toward her. Give me the original filing number for the Archon shipment and the corporate registration details for the shells. I'll show you. Goran looked at Drashev. Drashev made a small, unhurried gesture with one hand. Goran put a folder on the table. Darby opened it and went to work. She worked for 2.5 hours. She drank half the wine somewhere in the second hour without noticing. Drashev did not leave the table. He asked precise questions and absorbed her answers with the same quality of attention. And at some point he disappeared and came back with a sandwich from the club's kitchen because, he said, watching someone think at that speed was making him tired by proxy. She almost laughed. It surprised her, the almost. She found the account at 20 minutes past midnight, registered in the Cayman Islands under a name that was almost but not quite Taras Kovalenko, 2 letters transposed, the kind of change that read like a typo and wasn't. Inside it, $12 million and change, moved in 4 transfers across 11 days. There, she said, turning the laptop toward him. Drashev looked at the screen for a long moment. He's been planning this for at least a year, she said. The Archon filing was phase 1. There are 2 other companies in this folder with the same valuation pattern, different commodity codes, different ports, same inflated structure. My estimate is the total exposure is closer to 40 million. The room went very quiet. Drashev raised his eyes from the laptop to her face. The thing she didn't have a word for was louder now, sitting openly in his expression, not troubling to be anything other than what it was. You found in 2.5 hours, he said, what my financial team spent 3 months not finding. Your financial team was looking for someone to trust. I was reading the paper. A short silence. How long have you been doing this? 6 years professionally. I started reading shipping invoices for my uncle's auto parts business when I was 14. He imported components from Poland. I noticed his supplier was skimming units on every 4th container. My uncle didn't believe me until I showed him 18 months of the pattern laid out on his kitchen table. And your current employer keeps you in a back office. My employer keeps me where he thinks he's put me. She closed the laptop. It's not the same thing. Drashev was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of someone recalibrating something significant. Then, Taras knows you were in that dining room tonight. Goran notified him after you left, before the full scope of your... He stopped, a brief, controlled pause, before it was clear how much you understood. Taras will want to find you. My home address is on the firm's public filing database. I know. She looked at him. So I solved your problem and created my own. That is an accurate summary, yes. Darby sat back. She thought about her apartment in DuPont Circle, the 2nd floor of a row house, original hardwood floors, the window in the kitchen, where she'd hung Baba Halina's embroidered curtain, because she liked looking at it when she made coffee in the morning. She thought about how long it would take Taras Kovalenko to find that address. Not long. I need to be somewhere that isn't my apartment tonight, she said. Yes. And I need to be back at my office by 8 tomorrow morning. I have a container at Baltimore with a pharmaceutical consignment that has to clear an inspection window. Drashev looked at her. Then he looked at Goran. Goran, for the first time all evening, seemed to find something quietly funny about his own shoes. The club has 12 suites, Drashev said. You'll take one. Goran will see to Taras before morning. And tomorrow, when you've slept, I'd like to discuss a more formal arrangement. What kind of arrangement? I have import operations in 6 countries. I have been looking, for a considerable amount of time, for someone who can read what you just read. He said it without embellishment, as a plain fact. Darby considered this. The formal part of her mind was noting the obvious complications, that this was not a conventional employment offer from a conventional employer, that the man across from her was not in the habit of being refused, that she had tonight made herself both useful and compromised in the same 2-hour window, and that she was sitting in a Georgetown penthouse at midnight, eating a club sandwich across from a man whose $12 million problem she had solved, and who was looking at her in a way that Martin Elkins, in 6 years, had never once looked at her. Not like something to be managed, not like something to be filed away where it was less conspicuous. Like someone who had just turned up exactly where she was needed, doing exactly what she was built to do. "I'm not leaving compliance work," she said. "I'm not asking you to leave compliance work. I'm asking you to do it properly. And if I say no to the arrangement, then Goran drives you to a hotel of your choosing, and you never think about this evening again." A pause. "Although I suspect you'll think about it regardless." She held his gaze, he held hers. "Does your import network have any pull with Port of Baltimore inspection scheduling?" she asked. "Significant pull." "Then I want that pharmaceutical container cleared before 7. She stood, smoothing her blazer. "And I want a contract with an exit clause. 30 days written notice, my discretion." Drashev stood. He was tall in the way that particular kind of men were tall, not the lean height of youth, but the settled, occupied height of someone who had grown into every inch they'd been given and stopped apologizing for it somewhere along the way. He looked at her across the table with the focused, unhurried quality of a man confirming a decision he'd already made. 30 days, he said. "And I want to be able to take my grandmother's curtains with me if I leave." For the second time that evening, he almost smiled. This time it arrived the whole way, slowly, like something that had been a long time unexercised, changing the entire geometry of his face when it finally got there. "Your grandmother's curtains," he said, "go wherever you go." Darby Walsh had spent 29 years being the analyst in the back room, the one who caught what other people missed and handed it to someone else to carry forward. The one who was too much, too wide, too loud, too entirely herself for the front of the office, but precisely invisibly necessary to everything that actually worked. She had walked into the Ashford Club that evening to count crab cakes and sign a receiving log. She walked out of it, not that night, not literally, but from that moment forward in every way that counted, as the woman who had read Ruslan Drashev's entire operation in 2.5 hours, and told him, without apology or hesitation, exactly what she was worth. He had not argued. Baba Helena, she thought, would have approved of the curtains clause.